Hello and welcome to The Take with Sophie Ridge. I'm Kamali Melbourne, live at 9 p.m. here in the heart of Westminster on a day of utter chaos in British politics, with Liz Truss's premiership in real danger. Suella Braverman resigns as Home Secretary after breaching the ministerial code. She says she has serious concerns about the direction of the government and its commitment to honouring key manifesto pledges. Grant Shapps is the new Home Secretary just weeks after a now-cornered PM sacked him from his previous role as Transport Secretary, saying there was no room at the inn.
The ayes to the right, 230. The noes to the left, 326.
Dozens of Conservatives, including the PM herself, abstained in a crunch vote in the Commons on fracking, a vote Tory whips had earlier declared to be a vote of confidence in the government. But just after the vote, there were rumours the government chief whip, Wendy Morton, and her deputy had resigned amidst allegations of intimidation in the voting lobbies.
I have been very clear that I am sorry and that I have made mistakes.
Well, earlier, it was a bruising Prime Minister's questions for Liz Truss, where she committed to the pensions triple lock, contradicting her Chancellor's comments yesterday in what appears to be another U-turn.
A book is being written about the Prime Minister's time in office. Apparently, it's going to be out by Christmas. Is that the release date or the title?
Sir Keir Starmer taunted the Prime Minister as the Labour leader once again says there must now be a general election. All that as the PM cancelled a visit and suspended a senior political advisor on a day that's left Downing Street in turmoil. We'll bring you the takes from all sides in the next 60 minutes. Well, good evening. If the last few days and weeks have seemed chaotic, today took things to a new level. It's perhaps an understatement to say that Liz Truss's political future is in peril. This evening, her Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, resigned over a security breach, but dropped a political bombshell by declaring she had serious concerns over the direction of the government. Dozens of Conservative MPs, including the Prime Minister herself, abstained in a vote over fracking, even after Tory whips said the vote was a matter of confidence. That was followed by extraordinary allegations of intimidation and even physical bullying in the voting lobbies. Then, when the result of the vote came in, there were rumours that the chief whip and her deputy had resigned. Now, at lunchtime, the PM had another bruising session at Prime Minister's questions, just a second, after which another Conservative MP openly said she should resign. All right, well, a little later in the programme, I'll speak live to the Shadow Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper. But let's first bring in our Deputy Political Correspondent, John Craig, who is with us here in the studio. John, I think we're running out of superlatives to describe what's going on, aren't we?
Well, it's chaotic, and it's still chaotic because there's still no official confirmation that Wendy Morton, the Chief Whip, has resigned. Just to take you through the events of the day, which you've already summarised, the events in the Commons tonight followed a debate on fracking, on a Labour motion calling on the government to introduce a ban on fracking and also proposing that to bring in a bill to do that on the 29th of November. Now, Tories said that was Labour trying to take control of the order paper. This morning, this letter was sent to Conservative MPs by Craig Whittaker, the Deputy Chief Whip. It says it's a 100% hard three-line whip. This is not a motion on fracking. This is a confidence motion in the government, and we cannot allow this. Now, as the debate drew to a close, after some Conservative MPs had threatened to rebel, despite that, Graham Stewart, the Climate Minister, winding up the debate for the government, said, no, it's not a confidence vote at all. And, as you've said, 40 MPs, Conservative MPs, did not vote.
And the list is incredible.
It's not quite fair to say they all abstained because there were some had reasons why, for example, the Defence Secretary Ben Wallace is talking Ukraine in Washington with the Americans. But the list has got some interesting ones. Government ministers, Stuart Andrew. Tracy Crouch, ex-minister, was thought to be a rebel, wanted to rebel. David Davis, Nadine Dorries, Ian Duncan-Smith, Alistair Jack, the Scotland secretary. Boris Johnson, said to be on holiday in the Caribbean. Gillian Keegan, minister. Kwasi Kwarteng, sacked last week as Chancellor. Theresa May, former Prime Minister. Wendy Morton, the Chief Whip, who it's claimed is now resigned. Priti Patel, former Home Secretary. Angela Richardson, she was planning to be a rebel. Alok Sharma, the COP Minister. Chris Skidmore, he was wanting to rebel. Mark Spencer, a former Chief Whip. And Elizabeth Truss, the Prime Minister. What's going on there? And Ben Wallace, who I mentioned. Now, it is thought, it's been claimed, that the Prime Minister decided, under pressure from MPs, to scrap all this tough talk about a confidence vote and allow MPs essentially a free vote without telling the Chief Whip, who, let's not forget, Wendy Morton, one of her closest friends and allies, and so Wendy Morton resigned on the spot. Still no confirmation. And that's before we get on to talk about Suella Braverman, which I'm sure you're going to ask me about.
I am. But before we move on to Suella Braverman, let's talk about those allegations of intimidation and bullying. I mean, the Chief Whip are there to enforce discipline in the party, but this is probably taking it a little far.
What happened was there was a hold-up during the vote. The Deputy Speaker, Dame Eleanor Lang, was in the chair, and as quite often happens in contentious votes, she said, there's a hold-up in the lobby, go and find out what's going on. Now, it turns out there were some, what MPs have described as some pretty unruly scenes, allegations of bullying. Chris Bryant, the Labour MP, raised a point of order, talking about bullying and intimidation. He then came on Sky News and mentioned that a Conservative MP, Alex Stafford, a 2019 Red Waller from Rother Valley in South Yorkshire, had been bullied and intimidated. And the Speaker is said to have asked for an investigation carried out by the Deputy Speaker, who was actually in the chair at the time. All very unseemly. We don't know if the Chief Whip's still in post, but the government does look as though it's falling apart.
You mentioned Chris Bryant to raise the point of order. I mean, we've got his picture up there that he tweeted up. If we can bring that up again, and we can pick out a few of the key people in that picture. I believe you can probably see the back of the head of Jacob Rees-Mogg, the business secretary. Teresa Coffey's in that picture as well. Yes, when he, Mr Bryant gave an interview to Sky News, as did Jacob Rees-Mogg, spoke to our colleague Sam Coates in the central lobby. Mr Bryant didn't exactly point the finger of bullying and intimidation at Mr Rees-Mogg or Theresa Coffey, but you can see it's pretty crowded. Nothing unusual in the members' lobby being crowded during a vote. It would be, but you can't actually see. It just looks very crowded there, and no doubt there was a bit of pushing and jostling. It's claimed that this MP, Alex Stafford, was sort of marched through. Well, we've heard stories about that before, but it all does sound as though it all got a bit ugly in there. And perhaps, clearly there was a backlash amongst Conservative MPs against this tough letter they all got this morning, telling them it was a matter of confidence, they'd lose the whip if they voted against the government. But we had a complete climb down. Yeah, and as well as what we heard from Chris Bryant when he spoke to Sam Coates earlier, several MPs have also tweeted about what they saw happening. I think we can bring some of those tweets up as well now. John, I mean, talk to us how these votes work. Can they have timed out? Could that have been the reason why the Prime Minister, Liz Truss, didn't able to get into the lobby in time? It is a mystery why the Prime Minister didn't vote, because I was here in the studio with Dermot Murnahan earlier, and we were watching the voting going on from the camera at the bottom end of the chamber, the one at the other end from the Speaker, and we saw Liz Truss in the chamber. And a lot of the people on that list I've just read out, I mean, for example, I've seen lots of those MPs around Parliament today. Stuart Andrew, the Minister, David Davis, I saw him at the 1922 committee earlier, Ian Duncan-Smith. Clearly, Ben Wallace is on important government business. Theresa May, I suspect she just didn't fancy voting. She tends to just stay away when there's something she's not too keen on, rather sit on her hands like some MPs do in the chamber to say, look at me, I'm abstaining. Clearly, the government is losing control. Discipline is collapsing. Well, exactly. Let's go to that story that you raised then. It feels like a long time ago now, but the Home Secretary's gone and we've got a new one in place now. This was just before 5 o'clock this afternoon. Now, the new Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, was addressing Conservative MPs at the 1922 committee at 5 o'clock. Just before that,
we got the bombshell news that the Home Secretary's gone. Now, in her resignation letter, she says she sent an official document from her personal email to a trusted parliamentary colleague. We now know that that is her political soulmate, her ally on the right wing of the party, Sir John Hayes, veteran Tory MP and ex-minister. It was, she said, with the aim of garnering support for government policy. She says it was the advanced draft of a written ministerial statement about migration. A lot of the stuff was in the public domain. She says, and then comes the sexy stuff, if you like, the chunky stuff about really putting the boot into the Prime Minister. The business of government relies upon people accepting responsibility for their mistakes. Now, to be fair, Theresa May did admit mistakes at the beginning of Prime Minister's questions. Pretending we haven't made mistakes, carrying on as if everyone can't see that we've made them, and hoping things will magically come right is not serious politics. I've made a mistake. I accept responsibility. I resign. Then it gets worse. It's obvious to everyone we're going through a tumultuous time. I have concerns about the direction of this government. Not only have we broken key pledges that were promised to our voters, but I've had serious concerns about this government's commitment to honouring manifesto commitments, such as reducing overall migration numbers, stopping illegal migration, particularly the dangerous small boat crossings, for which, of course, she was responsible for the last few weeks. So, a pretty terse and stroppy and disgruntled ex-Home Secretary there. Grant Shapps turned up at the Home Office. He's got a huge job on his hands. He looked delighted, clearly surprised to get the call today. But Grant Shapps, only a few weeks ago, was criticising Liz Truss at fringe meetings and in interviews at the party conference. What a turnaround. We've now got Jeremy Hunt, who incidentally went down very well with Conservative MPs at the 22 tonight, and Grant Shapps, not from Liz Truss's wing of the party, not her political soulmates or allies at all, in two of the top jobs in government.
Yeah, it's quite a turnaround. It's a hell of a time in politics. John, really appreciate that. We'll speak to you again later in the programme. All right, let's get the view now from the Conservative Party. I'm pleased to say we can bring in Danny Kruger, who is the Conservative MP for Devizes. Danny Kruger, good evening to you. Thank you very much for being with us. So I wonder if you can just clear up what happened in the lobbies this evening. We've heard reports that there was bullying, intimidation. What took place?
I didn't see any of that, and very dismayed at those reports. I don't really believe them. I mean, I noticed that your sources are opposition MPs. Obviously, the atmosphere is febrile, as journalists say. Things are very bad for the government, and no doubt there are harsh words being exchanged. But I'm afraid that is politics. I'm afraid I don't believe that there was ever serious, intimidation and bullying along the lines that have been described. Certainly no manhandling.
So you're suggesting that those MPs who made those statements in the Commons chamber and then on social media and then on news channels were lying?
Well, they're exaggerating, I'm sure. I mean, they're twisting the knife in what is an extremely painful moment for the party. But as I say, I didn't see it anyway. I find it very difficult to believe that went on to the degree that is being reported. But listen, the fact is, our party is in a total mess. The government is in a very bad way. There have been a series of mismanagements, I'm afraid to say, in the whipping operation, which is a really difficult job to do because you're dealing with hundreds of colleagues who are very worried and we're a divided party at the moment. But the fact is that there have been some significant mistakes. I think over the last 2 days we've seen that, particularly in the way votes have been whipped. So I'm afraid, while I remain supportive of the government, I don't think we've got any real excuses to make. Things are not being managed well in Parliament at the moment. Let us alone the wider policy and the economic strategy that we've been pursuing.
We'll come on to some of that later, Danny Kruger, if we can. But, I mean, at this stage, do you know if the Chief Whip is still in post?
No, I'm afraid I'm getting my news as you are. No, I heard the rumours some hours ago that she'd resigned, so I don't know. But if I may...
After the letter that we saw this morning, Mr Kruger, saying that this was a 3-line whip, it's a vote of confidence in the government, and then when the vote takes place, if the government win handily, there are rumours that she's resigned.
Yes, I'm afraid I can't comment on those rumours. I do have sympathy with the whip, so even though I think that mistakes have been made, because they're trying to manage a very, very difficult situation. And while, as I've said, we've got to face facts and attribute responsibility where it belongs in terms of decisions made by ministers, we are in the context of an enormous change in our economic and social model that has been building for decades. We can certainly point fingers at the way the government managed its mini budget the other day, but really what happens is it pushed things over the edge that were falling anyway. Our economic model has been built on 30 years of cheap capital, cheap credit, cheap labour, on a centralised public sector and on an over-leveraged private economy that doesn't distribute wealth properly. So we have got to change our economic model. And all this, I appreciate it's important, very important about who's in which government job. But frankly, moving around ministers is so secondary to the fundamental challenges that we have as a country, which is to get our economic and social model right and recognise the mistakes which well predate the Conservatives being in power, obviously predate Liz Truss, but predate David Cameron too, and go back to the 1990s. So we've got to seize this moment, live up to our responsibilities as politicians, and take some really, really difficult decisions, which are going to be painful. And we've got to be honest about what that entails for the coming months and years.
Well, do they include the Prime Minister resigning?
Well, as I say, I appreciate the importance of the question, and I don't want to belittle that, but really this is not about the personalities of who's holding which office.
No, but,
it's about...
Sorry, Mr Kruger, if you don't mind, I've read what you put on Twitter about this new social covenant, and it's really a credo, it's a manifesto for a way that you want the government to run the country, and it's completely different to the way that this current Prime Minister is running the country. You put it on 20 minutes ago, an hour or so ago, right when the government was in this turmoil, this latest round of turmoil. So that's not very supportive, is it, of your Prime Minister? It would seem as if you don't want her in office.
Well, I'm afraid, going to get into the business of commenting on individual ministers and whether I think they should be in their roles or not. We'll just let the drama of politics play out on that front. What I want to happen is, and I believe Liz Truss could do this as well as anybody, is to reorient our economic model and our social policy towards the really important foundations of growth, which are about stronger families, stronger communities, restoring our national integrity through border control, through getting our rights framework properly founded again, and investing in the foundations of growth. That means public service reform, it means devolution to communities, it means supporting the economies of households rather than just individualised welfare payments and taxes. There's a totally different way of thinking about our economy, more manufacturing, focus on regional growth, not just on boosting the finance sector, and on ultimately cutting taxes by reducing the demand on the state that is driven by social breakdown. Those are the priorities that I think any Conservative government should be adopting, and I am confident that Liz and her colleagues could do this, but that is the direction that we need to go in.
Yeah, and you've made your position very clear on that, Mr Kruger. And as I say, you've done the tweet thread so everyone can read it there on your social media. But you backed Suella Braverman early on for the leadership, and obviously she resigned as Home Secretary just earlier with quite an excoriating letter that many have seen as perhaps positioning herself for another tilt at leadership. Will you support that?
Well, let's see. There's no vacancy. I supported Suella because I believe in her and her vision, but I regret her departure from government, and I pay tribute to her for her.
Do you regret the fact
decision.
that she also didn't have anything supportive to say for the current Prime Minister in her resignation letter?
Well, there's obviously some chagrin there. I guess she's presumably pretty sad to be going, but as now as a backbencher, she's allowed, as I am, to politely, as she has done so, just said, indicate her disagreement. We are a political party, we all hang together, but we also have disagreements, and sometimes those have to be expressed publicly. And so I think it's absolutely within Suella's rights to indicate in that courteous way that she has some of her anxieties about the direction of travel.
OK, Danny Kruger, do appreciate your time this evening. Thanks for being with us. Right, you're watching The Take live from here in Westminster, and up next we'll have more on the future of the Prime Minister. Hello and welcome back to Westminster. This is The Take. Let's get more now on the reaction to what's been another chaotic day. I'm joined by the Conservative MP for Ruislip and Northwood and Pinner, David Simmonds. David Simmonds, good evening to you. Lovely to have you in the studio with us. Danny Kruger said he didn't see anything happening in lobby. I want to get your take on it because you were there as well. What took place? Because there are some serious allegations of intimidation and physical manhandling of people.
So we've been promised an investigation. Like Danny, I was present. I've been present on many occasions in Parliament where there's arguments and disputes going on in the lobby. But that investigation clearly needs to take place. Our colleague who allegedly was manhandled says that wasn't the case. But there are those who say that something happened. Clearly that needs to be investigated and we'll see. But emotions were running very high in Parliament tonight. And I think all that drama is a bit of a distraction from the need to get on with the proper job of government.
Yeah, but did emotions need to run so high? Did this need to be set as a three-line whip earlier in the day and then changed during the debate? I mean, it seems like, again, the government have set themselves up for a fall here.
So opposition day debates, when the Labour Party in this case get to decide what's going to be debated, have been flashpoints before, and I think we need to recognise that. I'm not sure it was as well handled as it could have been, but the important thing is that we made what, in my view, was the right decision in the current energy crisis, that we would give local communities the opportunity, if they were happy for it, and they'd been through a proper consultation, and they thought it was the right thing to do, to allow fracking in their area. We know that things like natural gas are key resources, not just for energy, they're used for things like agricultural fertiliser. Oil is used for manufacturing, not just for burning in cars. So it is important, following all the events that have happened since the last manifesto was drafted, that the government is able to react to what's happening, try and protect people's household budgets and family finances.
But how much of that do you think is going to be lost, Mr Simmonds, by the fact that the Prime Minister herself wasn't able to vote because of something that was going on in the lobby?
Well, I don't know the reasons why all the people who weren't able to vote didn't vote.
Quite a few people.
And there were quite a lot.
Yeah.
And we know, for example, there were a lot of colleagues who were away abroad. They were on things like trade missions.
Some significant people who were here, some big names who were here, who didn't vote. Yeah. Theresa May, the Prime Minister herself, Kwasi Kwarteng, many people who were here in lobby chose not to vote. And no matter what what may have gone on.
Yeah, so I think
you managed to get through.
You need to put that question to those individuals. I was able to vote without any difficulty. I saw most of my colleagues were able to do so. But those people, they may have had permission to be absent. They may have been trying to say something to the government. We don't know the answer to that. I'd rather take a view once I've got proper facts.
What do you know about what's happened with Wendy Morton, the Chief Whip? The reports that she's resigned.
I don't know. I'm hoping perhaps Sky News will enlighten me on that subject, but it's certainly been in the media. We'll find out in due course.
We will try and enlighten you. I can give you a little bit of breaking news. In the past 10 minutes, Lord Frost has said that he wants Liz Truss to go. Of course, Lord Truss, former Brexit minister, and has now said that it's in the interest of the party for her to go. Your reaction to that, first of all?
Well, as a relatively new MP, like Danny Kruger, you heard from earlier on, my big focus is on getting the policies of the government right. I don't have a strong view about the personalities that are in charge of that. In my view, Liz Truss has made a good start. She's made some good appointments. I think the decision to appoint Jeremy Hunt as Chancellor, whatever the circumstances, is something that's gone down well, both in the markets, but most importantly in the difference that's making to what will happen with people's budgets. So we need to make sure that we carry on in the right direction. Now, Liz Truss will be listening to what's been said. If we get a government that stabilises with the right people in those right roles, then I'm confident that policies, which are the things that make a big difference to families and households in this country, can be got right.
And how do you make sure those people are in the right roles? I mean, it seems at the moment that once there is a lot of noise made, maybe the market's getting upset that Liz Truss is making decisions on the hoof, because it does seem as if some of these decisions have been made quite quickly. Let's go to the Suella Braverman decision. There are some reports that perhaps she didn't need to resign. It was a technical breach. That's how she describes it in her own letter.
Yes, I mean, I've read the letter that she wrote, and clearly she accepted that she'd breached the rules, and on the basis of that, because it was something which she should have known that she shouldn't have done, that it was right for her to go. But clearly, across the Conservative Party, across Parliament, there's a lot of talent. It was very striking when Jeremy Hunt made his budget statement, for example, that there was agreement cross-party, that these were the appropriate measures to stabilise the economy and to bring that sense of financial relief to households in this country. That is the right direction for us to be going in. And I don't have a strong view about which individual it needs to be that's behind those policies. We need to make sure that we are pragmatic Conservatives and that we are taking the economy, taking the country in the right direction.
I mean, forgive me for thinking it might be a little mischievous, but it would seem as if it was in her interests to resign in that way. And also, as we've seen in the letter, laid out quite clearly that she made a mistake, she resigned. I mean, she's speaking very clearly there to the Prime Minister, isn't she?
Well, the Prime Minister said, made an apology again at the dispatch box today.
But didn't resign.
What she was very clear about was that she'd made a mistake, she'd made errors of judgment in good faith. And those were things about policy, things that may have worked out exactly in the interests of the voters, of the people, in the way that they were intended to. And it became clear from the reaction of the markets, from what was going on globally, that that was not going to be the case. And she changed direction. And I think that was right. Now, clearly, that is different from an issue of rule breaking, which is what led to the Home Secretary's resignation.
Technical breach. And you said you're a new MP, so you must be concerned about what this could, all of this turmoil that we've had for the past few weeks, God, how long has it been, that the party has been facing is doing to your party, because at the moment you're way behind Labour in the polls and there are real concerns that you could be wiped out if there was an election very soon.
Well, clearly people will be looking at the opinion polls and asking what it means for them. The bottom line is the party has a 70-seat majority in Parliament. There's around 2 years to go until a general election is required. And we know that a lot of the things that are going on that are really impacting on households in this country are part of global contexts, which will take some time to feed through. So as we look at, for example, the reduction in gas prices that's happening on the wholesale markets, that will bring some relief to people as we get through the winter. And that's an example of how we might see a medium-term improvement in the way people are
I accept
feeling.
that, but I'm talking about you as a Conservative. You became a Member of Parliament in 2019. It's very new. So are you happy with the way that you see the Conservative Party right now at this moment?
So I think the Conservative Party is absolutely the best party to lead and to run the country and to run the government. But it's my view that we need some policy changes of direction. We begin to see some of those things happening in the last few weeks. So the new Chancellor's statement clearly is something which both has been well received in the markets, but also beginning to feed through into how household budgets, small businesses in this country are affected by that. That, for me, is the right direction of travel. The Conservative Party has been pro-European, anti-European. It's been pro-free markets, more about central control in its history. It's about making the right decisions in the circumstances that we face in the interests of the British people.
We appreciate your time, David Simmonds. Thank you so much for being with us this evening. OK. Right, you are watching The Take live from the heart of Westminster. And in the next few minutes, we'll take a close look at PMQs. Welcome back. This is The Take. It really has been an extraordinary day in Westminster, and one that leaves Liz Truss's political survival hanging in the balance. The Home Secretary has resigned. Dozens of Conservatives, including the Prime Minister herself, abstained in what was supposed to be a three-line whip vote on fracking, and there have been allegations of physical intimidation. Well, let's bring in Lord Barwell, Gavin Barwell, who was Downing Street Chief of Staff to former Prime Minister Theresa May. Lord Barwell, always good to speak with you. Thanks for being with us. So, look, these allegations of bullying in the lobbies, you were there during some of those late-night votes over Brexit. You ever seen anything like this?
No. I mean, I think the scenes tonight reflect very badly on Parliament and on the government. I was a government whip for a number of years. You know, that kind of behaviour is completely counterproductive. And I think that the general scenes tonight speak of a government that is in its last days.
I mean, in its last days is one way of putting it. What happened then, do you think? What broke down here? Because as we saw from this morning, there was that letter sent out that this was a three-line whip, a motion of confidence. Then during the debate, as John Craig was telling us earlier, that changed and it almost became a free vote. And then we saw a bunch of people, your old boss, not voting at all. How did that come about?
Well, I wasn't in the division lobby, so I can't tell you what happened in the space there, but clearly the government's position over what the whipping arrangements were changed at the last minute, and that is inevitably going to lead to confusion. But you have to ask the question about why those arrangements are changing at the last minute and what that says about the current state of the government and its ability to provide the leadership that the country needs.
Well, precisely. And what does it say?
Well, I think that the position is pretty clear. The Prime Minister's time as Prime Minister is coming to an end. Her authority is seeping away. You've got ministers resigning today or being sacked. It's not entirely clear. You've got ministers right now that are unable to tell us whether the Chief Whip is still in her job or not. So the Conservative Party has a duty to the country to provide effective government. And right now, the one bright spot is the Chancellor of the Exchequer. I think Jeremy Hunt, since he came into office at the end of last week, has significantly stabilised the position in terms of the economy. But the rest of what's going on is, frankly, a complete shambles. And it's an embarrassment to the country, it's an embarrassment to the Conservative Party, and the sooner it comes to an end, the better.
OK, well, that was going to be my next question then, Lord Barwell. I mean, how much longer has this thing got to run?
Well, that's in the hands of Conservative MPs. But, I mean, they need to reflect on whether at the moment the party is providing the leadership that the country needs, and whether these scenes reflect either well on the country as a whole or on the Conservative Party. Only they can resolve this situation, but they need to do so, and they need to do so quickly.
I mean, there are two huge issues here, of course. The Conservative Party is one thing, and you will be very tied to the future of that party. But as you mentioned, the country as well that is seeing a government that's in complete chaos. Do you think there are some Conservative MPs who are perhaps lacking the courage to do what needs to be done?
I think a lot of Conservative MPs feel exactly as you've described about the government at the moment. What they're trying to do is to see if they can find a way to resolve this issue quickly, rather than subjecting the country to another 3 months of a leadership election. But I think that the frustration that you voice, I don't know if you've seen the interview with Charles Walker this evening, who's a highly respected, long-serving backbench MP. And I think the emotion with which he spoke this evening speaks volumes for the current state of affairs within the party. You're quite right to say that the fundamental question here is about what is the national interest. And that is what should guide the Conservative Party, and it's what should guide its MPs. And the national interest is not being served at present. No,
it's not being served. But so, Lord Barwell, what do you make of some of these rumours of the way that this does get resolved with, a dual ticket of Rishi Sunak and Penny Mordaunt, or bringing back Boris? I mean, all of those potential ways through this have their own pitfalls, don't they?
So I think bringing back Boris Johnson is not the answer. On policy grounds, there was lots that the Johnson government was doing that I would agree with, but I think his behaviour as Prime Minister fell well below the standards that we all have a right to expect. So I don't think that's the answer to the problem that the party and the country finds itself in at the moment. I think if it's possible for some of the most senior and talented people within the party to agree on a kind of joint ticket to try and resolve this situation, so that we can have a rapid transfer of power and we don't subject the country to several months of a leadership election, which it really can't afford in the current situation that we find ourselves, then I think that would be a good way forward. If it can't do that, there is going to be huge pressure among the public, clearly, for a general election. So I'm sure a lot of those discussions are going on right now, but it needs to be resolved, as I said, quickly, because the current situation is not tenable.
But I'll put this to you like this, though. I mean, that might be neat and tidy for the party, but the public at large are definitely not going to like that, to have another leader installed, another Prime Minister installed. The calls for a general election will grow even louder. You might even hear it from some people within the party.
So look, obviously lots of people are going to call for an election. I mean, I would sort of gently observe to you that during my lifetime, more people have come Prime Minister through an internal transfer of power within a party than through winning an election. So it's not like this doesn't ever happen. The hand, I think, or the case of the party, if you like, will be strengthened if the new government that replaces this one returns closer to the manifesto on which Conservative MPs were elected. It's worth reflecting that tonight's events are about a vote on fracking, when the Conservative manifesto in 2019 said very clearly that that the fracking wouldn't go ahead. So actually, the Truss government tonight was trying to whip Conservative MPs to vote for something that was contrary to the manifesto on which they were all elected. So look, I understand your point entirely. Lots of people are hugely frustrated with the current situation. I'm going to argue there should be an election. If Conservative MPs don't want that, they need to demonstrate quickly to your viewers that they're capable of changing this situation, of delivering the stability and competence that people have a right to expect from their government. And as I said, at the moment, there is one bright spark, which is that the change of Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, has made some difficult, painful decisions that have stabilised the situation in terms of the financial markets. But the chaos that you've seen today with resignations and what's gone on in Parliament this evening, as I said, does not speak well at all.
OK, Lord Barwell, always good to have your thoughts on this. Thanks very much for now. All right, let's bring back in our Deputy Political Correspondent, John Craig. So, John, where do you want to pick this up? Should we pick up with what Gavin Barwell was saying, that his ideal version would be some kind of dream ticket between Rishi Sunak and Penny Mordaunt, or two others who are capable enough to run this party?
I think what I'd probably say to Gavin Barwell is dream on the dream ticket, because this is the whole thing. The party, the MPs cannot agree on a candidate. This idea of a coronation or a couple of senior figures coming together, there are so many people and their supporters who want the top job. Rishi Sunak and his supporters, Penny Mordaunt and her supporters, even now Jeremy Hunt, he's suddenly back in the running in the leadership stakes as well. And then there are those who want Ben Wallace, even though he says he doesn't want the job. But let me bring you two pieces of, if not strictly speaking, breaking news, significant developments in the last few minutes.
Excellent stuff.
Number one, Number 10 have told us Liz Truss did vote.
Hold on a minute.
I know.
This was the official
House of Commons list. Clearly there was a problem in the voting lobby in terms of people's cards on the electronic thingy or whatever. One MP told me that James Dudridge contacted Sky News to say, I voted even though I'm on that list. Now, secondly, and even more significant perhaps, Steve Baker, the Brexiteer Northern Ireland Minister, has told Sky News that neither Wendy Morton, the Chief Whip, nor Craig Whittaker, her deputy, have quit. He's told Sky News, this is Mr Baker, I saw the Deputy Chief Whip as he was leaving the Commons, and he said neither he nor the Chief Whip had resigned. He was most emphatic. So, I'm not sure we're going to do a breaking news. Chief Whip has not resigned. I think we only would if you had.
By saying, I haven't resigned. It's an interesting way to say goodbye to someone.
Well, clearly what's happened is, from all the accounts, well, perhaps not clearly, unclearly, what's happened is that we know that this letter went out first thing this morning to Tory MPs saying this is a confidence motion and it's a three-line whip and anybody who doesn't vote for it will lose the whip. Mm-hmm. Then there was this spectacular U-turn late on, not long before the vote at 7 o'clock, when number 10 said, no, it's not a confidence motion. Graham Stewart, the Minister, announced it in the House. It's claimed at that point Wendy Morton felt undermined and quit. Now we're being told she hasn't. Or she's been persuaded by the PM not to quit.
We'll find out more. John, thank you very much for that. You're getting all those texts. All right, you are watching The Take live from Westminster. And up next, I'll speak to the Shadow Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper. Hello and welcome back. You're watching The Take. Let's bring in now the Shadow Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper. Yvette Cooper, good evening to you. Thanks for being with us. First, let's see if we can try and get some more information to what happened in lobby today. Rumours of intimidation, bullying, some aggressive behaviour. You were there. Did you see anything?
It was certainly clear that there were some angry discussions taking place. Wasn't clear what, but what was there's no doubt about is it was total chaos. And you had the Chief Whip being sacked and then being not sacked, or being resigned and then not signed. At the same time as we've also had the Home Secretary being sacked. The Chancellor sacked just 5 days ago. This is total chaos, and I think shows that the Conservative government is really just coming apart at the seams, and it is not fair on people right across the country who are really worried about what's happening, to their mortgages, worried about what's happening in their communities, and seeing this kind of chaos right at the heart of government.
I mean, you've been in Parliament, you were in government for a long time, and you've been in Parliament a long time. What do you put it down to? And don't be partisan, don't just say it's just because it's the same old Tories. What do you put it down to that we're seeing this level of chaos right now in this government? Well,
I have never seen anything like this. Right? I've been an MP for 25 years. I have never seen anything like this. It is just totally chaotic. I think they're not focusing on people across the country who, need a government that takes seriously the state of the economy, that takes seriously our national security, these big issues of state that are just somehow being ignored because there is so much fighting, so much chaos, and it just feels like there are no grown-ups in the room. And so I do think this is a party issue, because ultimately we've had 12 years of the Conservatives just unravelling. They're seeing the consequences of their own failures and their own decisions, and now fighting over it in this totally chaotic and incompetent way. But people across the country, working people, are paying the price from this crisis because they're seeing mortgages go up, they're worrying about crime and antisocial behaviour in the local communities, and now worrying about fracking as well, because the government's just trying to force that through as well. It's really chaotic, really unfair on people.
I mean, to be fair to them, bringing in Jeremy Hunt has stabilised the market somewhat, hasn't it? So that was a good decision, something that needed to be done to try and make sure that there was a little bit of stability.
Well, they've had reversed all of the decisions that caused, huge problems, but the damage is done. That's the problem. Because of that mini-budget, because of the chaos around it, because they ignored the Office of Budget Responsibility, our serious economic institutions, mortgages are still up and people are still paying more. People are really worried about paying hundreds and hundreds of pounds more on their mortgages every month as a result of this carnage right at the heart of government. And that's why I think, in the end, it's not enough to change your Chancellor, it's not enough to change your Home Secretary or your Chief Whip. Ultimately, we need a change in government. It is time for a general election.
I mean, inflation was ticking up, as you will know, so they will say that by bringing in Jeremy Hunt, that has stabilised the market so much. Let's come on to your shadow brief then. So now you're facing Grant Shapps. I mean, you obviously know him from all the time in Parliament that you have spent. How do you expect him to be different from other Home Secretaries that you've faced? You've faced a few.
Yeah, I think the problem, again, is this is about shuffling the deck chairs, but the ship is still going down. And that's why I think it doesn't really matter who the Home Secretary is if you still have this chaos and confusion at the heart of government. We know that Grant Shapps, even just a couple of days ago, was talking about how he did not think that Liz Truss could survive. We know there's been, all sorts of those difficulties. And I just don't think this is about setting forward a positive plan for the country. We've still got the real problems with serious violence, with antisocial behaviour. You've got people just not being charged for crimes. The number of crimes being solved has plummeted. And that's as a result of the 12 years of Conservative policies, all of which Grant Shapps has been part of. So there's no real sign that anything is likely to change on those serious issues around crime, policing and the things we need to keep people safe.
Just while we're talking, Yvette Cooper, I've been told by my producer that the Conservative Party have confirmed that Wendy Morton, Chief Whip, and Deputy Chief Whip Craig Whittaker do remain in post tonight. So those rumours that they had resigned were just rumours.
Seriously, I mean, we'd heard initially they were sacked and then they were unsacked, that they'd resigned. Then we heard that there was a resignation letter that was written. Was it sent? Was it not sent? And then the Prime Minister was in talking to... I mean, when you've got that kind of mess, it means those basic things. You need governments to be able to get legislation through Parliament. You need, therefore, a Chief Whip in place that's working sensibly with the Prime Minister. You need to know that national security decisions are being taken well. So you've got to have a proper relationship between the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary. And you need markets to be stable. You need a proper economic plan to put the country right. So you need a relationship between the Chancellor and the Prime Minister. All of that seems to have fallen apart. Liz Truss seems to be in office but not in power, not making any of the key decisions other than this chaotic stuff about sacking people. We just need grown-ups to be taking these decisions. And I think if they can't do that, and it's clear they can't, they should get out of the way and move over for people who can.
I mean, you're saying that now, so Keir Starmer said that earlier. What mechanisms are in place for that to happen at this point? Because you know that that's a long shot for it to happen before the end of Parliament.
And I think that's really unfair on people across the country because it means this chaos is just carrying on. It's clear that, Conservative MPs don't want a general election right now, but actually, it's not fair on people
the Labour Party considered tabling a vote of emotion.
It's clear we thought today was a vote of confidence. It wasn't. Who knows what was going on? Yeah. Ultimately, Conservative MPs need to recognise that they are doing the country no favours by carrying on with this chaos that is letting the country down. It's not fair on those mortgages. It's not fair on people who are worrying about whether they can put the heating on this winter, worrying about whether they can pay their bills, to have this kind of instability and chaos carrying on. The Labour Party is ready. We have a team that is ready to form the next government. We've got plans that we've set out, but also just ready to be serious and to take a grown-up approach. That
you thought that this may have been a vote of confidence. Was that before or after Craig Whittaker said that?
Who knows? Exactly.
Because
no idea.
Some of the criticism of the way Labour tabled this motion was to deliberately force the hand of the government and try and set them up, put them into a trap. And the trap didn't close, did it? Because the government won this vote handily, defeated the Labour motion.
Part of what we were trying to do is actually prevent fracking happening. And Conservatives said that's what they would do. We've been really clear. We would prevent fracking going ahead. We think it'd be really damaging. We think it's not the right thing in terms of either net zero or in terms of safety or our energy supply. So we want to stop fracking going ahead. So that's why that's why we put forward the
Even
motion.
if local communities say that they want fracking, because that's the way that the government have kind of have moved this around, haven't they?
Yeah, so people have been really clear that they don't want fracking and they don't want this. And it's also
some areas,
bad.
Isn't the idea that you might get some reduction in your bill, you get cheaper energy?
Who knows? Who knows what the Conservatives are planning? But it won't solve our energy security problems. It won't cut people's bills, and it won't solve our net zero challenge that we need for the sake of the planet. We're setting out an alternative about renewables, about tidal, about nuclear, and about how to invest in them through a publicly owned GB energy that means the taxpayer benefits and we get cheaper bills as well. That's part of a long-term plan for growth. It's part of a serious Labour plan for government. And that's why it's just so shocking and awful to see this lot just continuing with the chaos when we could be getting on with the serious challenges we face.
OK, Yvette Cooper, thank you very much for being with us. We'll leave it there. Thank you so much. All right. Well, what has been another hugely tumultuous day at Westminster. That is all from The Take, where we have seen the Home Secretary resign, the Chief Whip and the Shadow Chief Whip say they were quitting, but then being back in post. Liz Truss is still in number 10 and will go to outside number 10 next for Sky News at 10 from Downing Street on another day of turmoil at the top of government.